The next item on the agenda is an oral question to the Commission on breaches of current freedom of movement rights of EU citizens residing in the UK and the use of 6-month expulsions. And I will start by giving the floor to one of our authors, that's Mrs. Bearder. Go ahead, madam.
Forgive me, I thought we had the Commission first. Oh, okay. Firstly, my thanks go to Sophie in 't Veld, a D66 MEP who has helped enormously with this issue. This union of sovereign states has been clear over the years that the rights of their citizens are important and to be protected, with mutual recognition of qualifications, agreements on health and pension rights and so on. Like many other MEPs, I receive heartfelt emails for citizens living in the UK and across Europe. There are tens of thousands of EU citizens in the UK. They've paid their taxes, they've paid into our pension pots, and they're paying down our debts. They contribute to our society and our economy. But threats from Mrs May's government must be stopped now. No ifs, no buts. They are our doctors, our nurses, shopkeepers, students, teachers and others. They are not political bargaining chips. There are many examples. There's the Romanian electrician forced to resign after threats and bullying. There's the Italian beautician who's been resident for 20 years, married to a Brit, but now threatened with deportation as she has no private health insurance. And the lists go on and on. There are real people, real lives, worried and fearful. Is that how we should be treating people we promised we'd welcome? My government needs to guarantee the rights of these people immediately and stop uncertainty. We need to protect the UK that I know, open, tolerant and united. But it is for this House and its MEPs to speak for all European citizens. We are the ones who must fight for their rights and that need to be protected. Brexit negotiations will be tough, and we all know it is easier to chop away rights than to protect them. So this House demands the Commission enforces EU rules, and the British government must respect those rules, respect the citizens, and respect the benefit that migrants bring. Thank you very much.
Merci, vous étiez bien la première.
Thank you. You were supposed indeed to be the first speaker. And now we turn to Mr. Moraes, another author.
Before I say anything else, I must put a clear question to Commissioner Jourová on behalf of EU citizens. Now and once Article 50 is triggered, will you, as the guardian of the treaties, take action to ensure that the Free Movement Directive is properly applied in relation to EU citizens both in the UK and UK citizens in other EU countries? And why must we say this today? Because there is compelling and building evidence since the Brexit vote from our constituency casework, responsible journalism, the voices of EU citizens themselves, that some EU citizens in the UK are experiencing great uncertainty about their position. Suspicion that far from having their rights protected in the sensitive transition period, the UK has already begun to use them as bargaining chips. We can detect this from the some 28% of EU citizens who have applied for UK citizenship since the referendum who have had their applications rejected or declared invalid. It is well known that the procedures for some who have lived in the UK, sometimes for decades, have had to fill in the notorious 85-page forms, which can often trigger delays and panic. I do not have time here to recount the stories of heartbreak and stifling bureaucracy, but we must ask if this amounts to a UK policy or negligence over those individuals and families who we are legally obliged to protect. The European Parliament will hold hearings to gather our own evidence and do our job, but the Commission can act right away. The UK Government has a moral, political and legal duty to protect the rights of all EU citizens, not least because they contribute to our communities and our economy. They are vital. As Article 50 is triggered, hundreds of thousands of UK citizens in other EU countries will want the same equality and dignity afforded to EU citizens in the UK. Not a negotiation, but a guarantee. The UK Government must do what is right, the Commission must engage, and we, your MEPs in the European Parliament, will represent you.
Merci. Ensuite...
Thank you, sir. Ms Spinelli is our next speaker, another author of the resolution.
Madame la Presidente, se ci rivolgiamo alla Commissione con questa interrogazione.
If we're putting this question to the Commission, it's because we want to give a voice to more than 3 million European citizens who live in the UK and the more than 1 million UK citizens living in the EU. People are very anxious, and the people's right of circulation or movement, residence and work should be guaranteed as of now, and obviously in the future exit agreement as well. Contrary to what the Brexit proponents have actually said, in actual fact it's going to be very difficult for these people to get their acquired rights enforced. A lot of lies were bandied around before the referendum, and unfortunately the Remainers were too silent on this subject. So it's crucial for the Commission to speak very clearly now. The House of Lords has already said this very clearly. If there's no agreement, the consequences of the loss of EU citizenship is going to be absolutely disastrous. We therefore need to know how the Commission is going to proceed to deal with the UK's infringements in the last few years with very restrictive laws on residents of EU citizens in the UK. Up until the time that there's a separation agreement, the UK is bound by EU law and the Directive on Free Movement. It therefore has to be accountable for any of these duties like other member states. And the UK cannot say that up to now it will only bring in the brightest and the best from the EU as well as the most wealthy, as it's promising to do after exit. Thank you.
Et enfin, dernier auteur, Madame.
And our final author is Lambert.
Thank you, President. I think we're all aware that the UK is not the only member state with issues regarding long-term residence and citizenship, but we'll discuss the others when the Petitions Committee brings forward their resolution. However, many EU27 nationals do live in the UK, and over a third of them live in my region of London. They're my neighbours, some of them. And the lack of certainty over their future is causing huge concern. Just as it is for UK nationals living in other member states, you only have to read the testimonies on the Brexpat's site. Much of this uncertainty certainly could be removed by the British government, and I think many of us will welcome tonight's vote in the House of Lords on the Article 50 bill, asking the government to introduce proposals within 3 months of the triggering of that to ensure that EU citizens in the UK have the same residence rights after Brexit. But in the meantime, as people have said, we have people who in the UK, from countries, they've lived there, they work, they study, they retire, they have caring responsibilities, and there I think we have an issue with the Long-Term Residence Directive, and they don't want to be used as bargaining chips. They feel it's insulting, it's demeaning, and it is. So our government could at least be clear that these people are valued and that they should strongly condemn the rising racism and xenophobia we're seeing in the UK. Because a lot of the stress and the fear that we're seeing is also being caused by the attitude of the authorities. And certainly in the terms of sickness insurance, we know there has been a shift in position by the British government over the last few years on the role of the NHS there. So we really hope that the Commission will get on, please, and introduce the infringement proceedings that have been hanging fire for so long. And again, I think many of us would say from the casework that we are seeing, and indeed from the excellent Libe Petitions survey, that when you look at this, we either have a government that's in dealing with willful incompetence or targeted administrative efforts to actually delay, restrict, diminish, all of these words that crop up time after time, and we'd like some certainty, please, for our citizens and yours.
Merci. Vous avez la parole, Madame Jourová.
Thank you, Mrs. Jourová from the Commission.
Madam President, honourable members, freedom of movement is one of the basic rights of EU citizens, and the European Commission will continue to defend it as a top priority. The correct application of EU rules on free movement by all member states is of fundamental importance, a correct application by all member states. And as long as the UK remains a member state, all rights and obligations continue to apply. I am fully aware that EU citizens living in the United Kingdom are concerned about their future rights. EU citizens residing in the United Kingdom deserve to know what their rights will be in the UK after the UK left the European Union, and vice versa. The same applies to UK citizens residing in the other 27 member states. The authors of the oral question are absolutely right. The people need certainty and stability, and they deserve respect and fairness. That is why I hope that this question can be addressed as soon as possible. However, it is first for the UK to give effect to the outcome of the referendum vote. There can be no negotiation before notification, as you know. It is therefore not possible to be more precise at this stage. Let me now refer to the individual questions. On the first question concerning the statistics on the number of residence applications, resident refusals and expulsions from the UK, the Commission does not have up-to-date statistics on this matter. EU law on free movement of EU citizens does not oblige member states to collect such data and share them with the Commission. Some data on numbers of issued residence documents are in the public domain, but there is little data on refused applications, and there is almost no publicly available data on expulsions and appeal rates. Ever since the entry into force of the Free Movement Directive in 2006, the Commission has been working closely together with Member States to improve their ability to collect statistical data and share it. Unfortunately, progress is limited due to a lack of commitment on the part of the Member States. With regard to the infringement procedures, I would like to underline that the Commission takes appropriate action to address failures of any Member State to comply with their obligations under the EU law. There are currently infringement procedures in the area against 8 Member States. The 2 pending infringement procedures against the United Kingdom relate to access residence rights of economically non-active citizens and rights of UK nationals returning to the United Kingdom after residing in another Member State. I would like to inform you that the Commission is assessing carefully these cases. As regards the residence rights of economically non-active citizens, the Commission will take into account in its assessment the recent case law of the Court of Justice concerning the conditions to which Member States can subject the access to welfare benefits by economically non-active EU citizens in order to protect public finances. Please allow me to underline that the Commission is also carefully assessing the compliance with the provisions of the Free Movement Directive of the latest amendments to the UK legislation that came into force in February 2017. With regard to your last question, the Commission attaches great importance to providing guidance to Member States in order to prevent breaches of EU law. Therefore, since the Free Movement Directive entered into force, the Commission adopted 5 official guidance documents. From 2008, this is a report on the application of the directive. From 2009, guidelines for better transposition and application of the directive. 2010, handbook for the processing of visa applications. 2013, report on free movement, and 2014, handbook on marriages of convenience. In addition to official guidance, the Commission has met experts from Member States 24 times. in an expert group dedicated to the application of the Free Movement Directive. These meetings are a useful tool to communicate the Commission's interpretation on issues of practical application of EU law. Last but not least, I would like to inform you that a few weeks ago, the Commission has made available an e-tool on free movement for national administration, together with its citizenship report issued by the Commission in January 2017. The citizenship report sets out a number of actions to raise citizens' awareness of their rights and how to seek help if the rights are not respected. Thank you.
Merci. Nous commençons les prises.
Thanks very much. Now we come up for group spokesman. Ms. Metsola is first up. 1.5 minutes, please.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Free movement is one of the cornerstones of our European project, and we need to be vigilant in order to ensure that there are no unnecessary limitations to it by any member state. The sufficient resources argument is one that requires constant monitoring, and while it is fair that EU migration does not become a burden on the host state, this principle should not be abused by member states, nor should it be used, as my colleagues have said, as a bargaining chip. The UK remains a member of the EU, and the Commission must insist that until the moment it is not, any and all existing EU acquis needs to be respected, implemented and properly applied. In this respect, it is crucial that the Commission provides Member States, including the United Kingdom, with proper guidance to ensure the correct application of the Free Movement Directive and protect the rights of EU citizens. This is an issue that is so personal for so many people. I have met countless Maltese citizens who live and work in the United Kingdom, and many UK nationals who live in my constituency of Malta and Gozo, and they are worried. They are concerned that the life they have spent decades building is suddenly uncertain. They are anxious that after years of abiding by the law, working and paying taxes, they read reports that make them apprehensive. They should not be made to feel targeted. Their rights must be clarified sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Les socialistes et démocrates, Monsieur Corbett, 1 minute.
Mr. Corbett for the S&D, 1 minute.
Half of the Socialist Group, and especially the Labour members of the Socialist Group, let me say that the way the British government appears to be intending to use European citizens living in the UK as pawns in the negotiation is a disgrace. The good news is that an hour ago in the House of Lords, the UK government, the Conservative government, was defeated when the House of Lords adopted an amendment that obliges the government, if it is confirmed by the House of Commons, to settle this question as quickly as possible over the next, in the shortest period ahead. If that is sustained, that is good news. But I fear that the Conservatives will use their majority in the House of Commons to overturn this amendment and go back to the status quo. It is a disgrace, and we shall fight it all the way. But we must do one more thing in this Parliament. We must be vigilant throughout the negotiations and look very closely at the deal that comes back, the so-called divorce deal, because if it does not respect citizens' rights, we should refer it to the Court of Justice to verify its compatibility with the treaties.
Au nom des ECR.
For these here, Mrs. McIntyre, 2 minutes.
Madam President, Britain has a long and celebrated history of immigration, a proud record of welcoming people from inside the EU and from across the world, and this will continue long after Brexit. Immigration has made our country stronger, richer and more tolerant. The Prime Minister was very clear about the value she places on the contribution of EU citizens to Britain, to its economy, its society and its culture. And that is why securing the status of EU nationals residing in the UK and of UK nationals residing in the EU is a top priority for the Prime Minister. Any delay in reaching guarantees on this issue is a consequence of timing and procedure, not of political will. Why are we not now debating how we can make freedom of movement work better? Why are we not debating how we can rebuild the confidence of people in the principle? Why are we not debating how we can address the concerns regarding its implementation across the whole of Europe? For example, we could be addressing the concerns in Germany about access to public services and benefits. We could be addressing the demographic challenges that many EU countries face. You know, these debates do nothing to convince people that we have solutions to the challenges we face. And then we wonder why voters are turning to the fringes of our political system for answers. So debates like this just fuel the scaremongers. They spread fear amongst our citizens who are already unsettled by the changing political landscape. We are missing an opportunity to strengthen our goals of a better Europe. And I'm afraid political point scoring ahead of the triggering of Article 50 will only weaken this House and its credibility.
Madame McIntyre.
Mrs. McIntyre, there are 2 blue cards. Would you accept them?
Il y a deux.
There are 2 blue cards for you. Would you accept them?
Mr. Seb Dance et Monsieur Liadh NÍ RIADA. Madame.
Mr. Seb Dance and Mr. Liadh.
Allez-y.
Tanto cantar an luach atá Theresa May chur muintir na Hórapa. Cén luach chur.
What is Theresa May now indicating to people in the north of Ireland with regard to staying within the European Union? We're really letting them down, and now there's a risk that the Good Friday Agreement is at risk as a result. I am not confident in any way that Theresa May is supporting people in the north of Ireland who wish to remain within the Union.
McIntyre.
The Conservative Party has always been the Conservative and Unionist Party. The Conservatives believe completely in Northern Ireland and in supporting the Northern Irish citizens of Great Britain. So we are committed to ensuring that all parts of the country, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales and England, remain as a union and together solve the problems that are inevitable in this Brexit process.
Monsieur Dance.
Mr. Dance.
Thank you. I'm grateful. Thank you for allowing me to intervene. You say that this debate is a signal, sends a signal, an unhelpful one, according to you. Surely the government sends a much stronger signal than we ever could in this House. And is it not the fact that the government is refusing now to acknowledge and to protect the rights of the 3 million citizens who live in our country is damaging our economy, damaging our public services, because these are people who we are sending a signal to that we don't want them? That's not British.
Madame McIntyre.
Were it true, it would not be British, and I would agree with you. But it isn't true, and you are doing our Prime Minister a great disservice if you think that she does not want to confirm the status of EU nationals residing in the UK. She has made that very clear. But she's also made clear that we want to protect the rights of UK nationals in the other European countries. And those 2 things go hand in hand. If it was down to our Prime Minister alone, it would already have been solved. It's not Britain that's holding this up. It is other member states that will not discuss this and will not agree it at this point.
Au nom du groupe ADL.
Well, for ALDE, we have Mrs. Becerra for a minute. Yes, thank you, Chair. Commissioner. Yes, while the UK continues to be a member state of the European Union, its government is still obliged to respect the treaties that it signed, and the Commission has to guarantee that they're respected and act against anybody who infringes them. Given the colossal uncertainty that's generated by Brexit, it's our obligation to give certainty and real solutions to all the European citizens who for years have lived and contributed loyally to the UK. and to the countries of the Union. Thanks to the initiative of my Liberal colleague Sophie in 't Veld, we've set up a working group in this Parliament with the single, clear, common objective to defend the rights of European citizens resident in the UK and the citizens of the UK resident union. Now, even before Brexit, the discrimination of my compatriots in the UK was already a reality, and I know this because I'm following closely the Facebook group Spaniards in the UK, and now it's subtitled Surviving Brexit. But, Mrs. May, rights are not negotiable, and European citizens are not a bargaining chip.
Thank you.
Au nom de la GUE
For GUE, 1 minute, Mr. CARTHY.
Thank you, Chair.
The concerns of members here tonight when they outlined their frustration and anger at the failure of the British government to outline its commitment to protect EU citizens living in Britain. But why should we be surprised that the British government won't commit to protecting the rights of EU citizens in Britain when it won't protect citizens that it claims jurisdiction over? The people of the north of Ireland voted to remain part of the EU. I am an Irish Republican. I've listened to all my life institutions like this, institutions like those in Westminster, telling me that the constitutional status of the north of Ireland could not change unless the majority of the people acceded to it. We all collectively came together in 1998 and accepted the Good Friday Agreement, which underpinned that principle. Well, we're saying tonight, right back at you, the people in the north of Ireland wanted and want to remain part of the EU. That decision must be respected, and we are depending on the EU to stand up for citizens in the north of Ireland, because it's absolutely apparent that we cannot depend on the British government to do so.
Pour 1 minute.
1.5 minutes for the EFDD, Mr. Finn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At a time when the people of Europe are calling for reductions in immigration and stricter border controls, here you are, going on and on and on again. While you elitists in this place may not want to accept it, the Brexit vote made a decision. The British people decide who comes to our country and who stays there. And as for residents' rights, the EU is scaremongering, as are all of you, and treating British expats and EU citizens as bargaining chips. It's an absolute disgrace, and it's one more reason, just one more, why we are glad to be out and why we are confident that we've made the correct decision. And may you all suffer for what you're doing to those people. Thank you.
Acceptez une carte bleue.
Would you accept a blue card?
Je passe la parole à Madame.
Then Mrs. Atkinson has the floor for 1 minute on behalf of the ENF.
Well, I'm certainly not in favour of the EU nor the UK using British citizens as bargaining chips. That's quite disgraceful. But Mrs Merkel and others could actually state very clearly now that they're not using people as bargaining chips, but they're choosing not to do it. But what you don't recognise in this place is that the British people, the majority, said by vote that they are taking back control of our borders. As Lord Tebbit, my hero, said in the House of Lords this evening, we will be putting British citizens first. Yeah, he's back. Also, yes, the Lords did make a decision this evening, but guess what? Our Home Secretary, at least she's grown a pair of balls recently and is going to rescind it. They're going to overturn it because the British voted Brexit. And yes, Mrs Spinelli, we are going to have the brightest and best from around the world, from China, from India, and we are going to choose who come to our borders. Not you, Labour. You're out for another 20 years, out for a generation, and thank God for that. And roll on Mrs May, I tell you. Absolutely.
Mr. Lenaerts for 1.5 minutes.
Chairman, thank you, Chairman. Over 8 months have passed since 52% of the British voters decided that the UK should leave the European Union. And in those 8 months, the British government has not triggered Article 50, and they have not opened up the opportunity to actually negotiate about how to best arrange our divorce. So what have they done? They have confronted those Europeans that applied for residence permits with a level of bureaucracy that I can only describe as ironic for a government that has spent so much time complaining about bureaucracy in the European Union. They published new regulations on immigration, updated policy on removal and revocation of European citizens, which created only more fear, more chaos and more uncertainty for those Europeans living in the UK. And they've sent letters to European citizens living in the UK for decades, often married to UK husbands, wives. They have sent them letters to make sure they prepare for their departure. And if this is the idea of Prime Minister May, of creating the grounds for a friendly negotiation, if this is the idea of global Britain, then I really ask her to think again. Because this is not global Britain, it is certainly not noble Britain, it is little Britain at its very smallest.
Pour une minute, Madame Post.
Mrs. Post, 1 minute.
Many of us have received mails from concerned EU citizens in the UK. One group of people have not sent these letters, but they do have a lot to worry about. There are up to 300,000 Roma migrants in the UK. Recently, a report from the Institute for Public Policy Research warned that Roma EU migrants in Britain face a triple whammy of challenges. Legal limbo in terms of residency, racist attacks with an increase of 57% since the referendum. Having to leave Britain for them would mean not knowing if you will have to send your kid to bed hungry. You will probably not get any emails about this, but I would like to ask you, dear colleagues, to still put some thought and action into the situation of the most vulnerable casualties of Brexit.
Monsieur Radev.
Mr. Radev, 1.5 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Madam President, colleagues, the free movement of people within the EU is one of the biggest advantages of membership, and it is directly enjoyed by millions of citizens every day. Removing or even limiting it would have a negative impact on people's lives. This is not only one of the main freedoms, it is also a key factor for the growth of Europe's economy, business and its competitiveness. In this context, I wish to say clearly that the attempts of the British government to limit the rights of EU citizens living or wishing to settle in the UK are unacceptable. Until such time as it actually leaves the Union, the UK is a member state, and as such it is obliged to respect the treaties and existing legislation, including the principles of free movement and non-discrimination. I condemn the use of untruths to spread fear in the British society that half of Bulgaria and Romania would move to the UK. The difficult negotiations ahead are no reason to make unfounded claims about a member state as an excuse to breach the treaties, nor for an arrogant infringement of the rights of European citizens. This is why I call on the European Commission to defend all European citizens and guarantee their rights to free movement and establishment throughout the Union, the UK included, and, if necessary, launch an infringement procedure against it. We need more information about cases of non-respect of these rights and the steps that would be taken to correct this.
Minute, Monsieur Negrescu.
Mr. Negrescu, a minute.
There are worrying signs of possible violations of the right to freedom of movement of European citizens in the UK. I made a list of examples in a petition signed by over 30,000 people that I submitted to the European Parliament. If we have this problem now, I am wondering what will happen after Brexit. We have to react from now on to prevent any abuse, because this not only affects Europeans but also the British people. Too often populists talk in Britain about Eastern Europeans that come to take their jobs. Who believes that we wanted to see 200,000 Romanian professionals, students, doctors and engineers trained in Romania leave for UK is really crazy. In the same time, it is them so-called bad Europeans that buy British products, work with UK companies, fight to protect the British people after Brexit. I trust the EU and the British people will not let the freedom of movement in UK disappear, because together we are stronger. We have to give more freedoms and rights to Europeans to win against populism. We do not need 5 scenarios. We need one good one to make Europe a better place for Europeans and British people, and the freedom of movement is at the core of this project for the future. Thank you.
Monsieur Pospíšil, maintenant.
Mr. Pospíšil, 1.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'll just pick up on my EPP colleagues' words. I'm very happy to have this point on the agenda today because when Britain is still part of the EU, the Commission has to do maximum to make sure that Britain and the British observe EU legislation. It may not have to do so much with the key problem we debate right now. There is the Free Movement Directive, and if it turns out that Britain doesn't observe this particular directive, it is a problem. It is a shame, Commissioner, that we do not have more statistics on how many EU citizens have been exiled from Britain, because otherwise we would see whether the directive is being observed or not. Together with the rest of EPP, I would like to ask you to pay attention to this, because there are 4 key pillars: freedom of movement, movement of capital, movement of goods and services. And if we close our eyes over limitations of one of those freedoms, that would be very bad, no matter about Brexit and no matter about the rights of EU citizens after Brexit. This is about maintaining our values and principles. Thank you.
Well, I'd open up Catch the Eye with 4 requests. We'll start with Mrs. Ward.
Julie Ward.
Thank you very much, President. I wanted to draw attention to the case of homeless people, homeless European migrants who found themselves destitute and rough sleeping. In my constituency in northwest Manchester, the Booth Centre is committed to helping rough sleepers to move off the streets and into stable homes. It's working in close partnership with many organisations, including local authorities, and they are very concerned about the recent increase in British Home Office activity around European migrants who are rough sleeping and at risk of mental health problems. This attack on rough sleeping has coincided with the Brexit campaign, where European migrants have been stigmatised and hate crime has increased in my country. The Booth Centre is actually fully committed to the voluntary assisted reconnection of destitute European migrants, and in the last 12 months has organised the return of 141 people. They work with the individual to ensure they've got a place to stay on their return and are linked to family, medical and social services. But the Home Office at the minute is riding roughshod over this and not working properly with the voluntary organisations that put these people's well-being at the core of their work.
Madame Ward.
Thank you, Mrs. Ward. Mr. Moraes, you're just in time to take the floor.
Thank you very much. The issue that we're discussing today is particularly serious in that we have already observed a number of different problems as far as the free circulation of citizens of the European Union, and all of this upon the basis of Brexit, corrects the speaker, he corrects himself. So we have numerous different citizens of the European Union working in the UK. We also have many Greeks working in the UK right now, and they're worried about their prospects for the future. So under what conditions will they be able to continue to work in the United Kingdom is the question, and the decision to complete this exodus of the UK from the European Union. It's been calculated that it will last 2 years, and during these 2 years there are going to have to be full rights respected of citizens of the European Union in the UK and of Greeks thus in the UK as well. So we have to foresee what is going to happen in the future to act effectively.
Mr. Caputo.
Grazie, Presidente.
President, now we have just heard from the Home Affairs Minister that there are going to be tremendous changes following Brexit as concerns immigrants and people working in the UK. Now, free circulation is an absolute must in the European Union. It is a fundamental liberty. Undoubtedly, this situation, of course, puts into question numerous issues that will come up with Article 50 and its triggering, as concerns the free circulation of individuals and also a number of different articles of the Charter of Fundamental Human Rights as well. So we have to protect individuals under these particular circumstances, not forget what those fundamental covenants cover as concerns the protection of human rights. And I hope that these particular worries and concerns will not turn into some sort of implement that will create problems on the diplomatic front. What we want, above all, is the protection of citizens of the European Union, and not only. Thank you.
Mr. Škripek.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let us be honest, the 4 economic freedoms are the main reason why EU citizens believe in the project of European cooperation. They will only feel European if they are truly equal citizens. Unfortunately, today we are witnessing the creation of 2 categories of citizens. There is talk of the end of Schengen, of different working conditions, of different food quality, and are we really still talking about the EU? In the UK, more than 100,000 Slovaks are living in this uncertainty today. Eastern European workers have always made a positive contribution to the countries of old Europe and have been contributing to the UK budget to the tune of more than £5 billion annually. Also, Austria has also announced that it will limit child benefits to Slovak workers, especially care workers, of whom there are 20,000. They work hard, they pay their taxes in Austria. Low wages in Slovakia forced Slovak fathers and mothers to look for employment abroad so that their children have a better perspective in life. Free movement of people has not hurt the member states, it has helped them. I would like to ask the European Commission to defend the interests of all EU member states, as well as the leaders of all the member states, to strive for agreement and compromise. Thank you.
Merci. Ceci conclut le catch.
This concludes the catch the eye. So, Mrs. Jourová will now wind up the debate.
Madam President, honourable members, I would like to reassure you that the Commission is taking all necessary action to make sure that EU law is fully respected. Until the treaties cease to apply to a member state that has notified the European Council of its intention to withdraw from the Union in accordance with Article 50, such member state remains a member of the EU with all rights and obligations. EU law continues to apply in full to the United Kingdom and in the United Kingdom until it is no longer a member of the European Union. Thank you.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you. That debate is now wound up, and now we'll have an oral question to Council on gender balance among the judges of the Court of Justice, and I would like to give the floor immediately to the author of the question, Mrs. Delvaux. Thank you, Chair. Well, the